Lair Infernoids on that Ishizu mat. It's about that time. Let's go.
As always, guys, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, but I definitely want you to check out those Ishizu mats and then also be on the lookout for all the content coming.
So guys, with the Infernoid lore basically being that like God like sent this as like punishment through the Cleaforts to like destroy life, like it's really pardon me, it's very, very deep, like the lore behind Infernoids, but it's a very, very powerful deck in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So with that being said, we're just gonna get straight into it. Shout out to the artwork. Got this as a gift, like an early Christmas gift. I think that was kind of cool. Like an alt art, like obelisk that somebody like painted on. It was really, really badass. My friend got it like a regional or something. Really cool looking card. But yeah, Infernoid Anunsu is the dad of the deck, the grandpa of the deck. It basically is Dark Hole on summon and negates a spell or trap and banishes. Now, very, very powerful additional effect is to be able to just clear the board with the Dark Hole and then be able to just have the attack to boot, to punch over stuff like Rukalos. Maybe you have like a Dark Ruler and then you summon this card and just wipe an entire board. That is very, very key. I'm citing the Dark Ruler just because I have an additional need for a card that I feel is a bit more variable, able to meet the variables within the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, which is extraordinary right now because there's multiple very, very powerful decks and there's a tier 0 deck floating around. But Anunsu is Anunsu. Infernoid Diviati is the grandma of the deck, which is basically Heavy Storm on summon, the inverse of Anunsu, and then additionally it's like Mechaba and then it negates a monster effect and banishes it off of the field and doesn't target anything, so it's just like boom, banished. A lot like Mechaba, very, very comparable card with 2900 attack, so it can't punch over everything like weak against Rukalos, but like again, if you don't want to summon this one against tier like that until you have advantage, and then when you do and you have a bunch of DD Crows in your deck to follow, game's over. A Tonedale is the BLS style effect and just a big beater on the field, and the DD Crow. So all of the big Infernoids that you see on your opponent's turn and your turn can activate their effects. The smaller ones can only activate one of their effects, and they only can activate either on that turn or this turn. You'll see what I mean in a minute, but attack and then the ability to attack again. And again, with a card like Dark Ruler being somewhere in your deck, this can be a very, very powerful card with that as well, just being able to clear stuff. Kind of like Ultimate Conductor, Purgatrio, etc., except it can't attack endlessly, just twice. Infernoid Saitsumas is the most powerful one in my opinion, just because when you attack, if it did kill something or if it just battled in general, you get to banish a card off of the field without targeting. That's very, very good against cards like Dragoon, baiting out a Dragoon and then attack something else, banished. That's nuts. And a lot of times, a lot of these decks have additional cards on the field where they're trying to lock you with a power card. This can help you to fight through that. Infernoid Sajet is the card that's very mind hackerish. It's been out a lot longer than number 89, but it is an additional effect to be able to attack, and then your opponent gets the option to banish a card from their deck with their choice from their extra deck, and then you can kind of control what they do, but then again, they get to pick, so it's not that powerful. It could have been really powerful, but it's an additional name that you have to play because of the trap card in your deck. I'll get to that in a second. Infernoid Patrulia is the MST with 1800 attack, and the Ishizu build, which I'll be featuring in a second. Give it a second. Relax. But Infernoid Patrulia is MST when it hits the field. It can either be the level 4 that you need, it can be an 1800 beater that you need, or it can be an MST that you need. Very, very, very variable. Again, Infernoid Harmodic is the monster popper in the deck with a level 3. This has a combo with Infernoid Decatron. If you're playing Omega, I'm not in this build because I'm going back and forth between, am I playing Super Poly, am I not? Am I playing Gamma in my main, am I not? Am I trying to set up an Omega like that? Is Omega keeping up with what everybody's doing? Sort of, if you're dealing with Majora in the graveyard. It can send off of Tierra, which I'll get into in a second as well. It's so much variables going on right now that it's just a lot to try to figure out on the fly, but this has been working, so this is why I'm using it. And this is a level 3, and you'll see the combo in a split second. Antra is the last of the names. that are kind of in general. There is another one named Pyramias, which is a level 1, but it's just not that good. It's Night Beam, and that's okay, but they'll flip it up once they read the card. So, you know, and there's no like level combos that are like that. And then Infernoid Answer is basically Compulse with high defense and the ability to tribute all of the smaller ones that you just saw, the level 5, the level 4 or lowers, all contribute on your opponent's turn to DD Crow. The big ones can do it on either turn. The smaller ones can only do it on your opponent's turn, but these all have their effects, like this is Compulse, Harmadic was the Monster Popper, and Petulia was the MST. Infernoid Decatron is all of those names that you just saw. By sending them, it only copies their on-field effect, not their on-summon effect. So no, you don't get like this effect. That would be absolutely dumb. If you could just summon it, instantly copy a Nunsu, and then crack your opponent in the head with it, it would be absolutely hilarious, and this deck would still be extremely relevant. But this is still one of the most powerful rogue decks ever created, in my opinion. And the ability to help that with power cards like Pot of Extravagance, which is still just too powerful to not play. I'm playing to go second build. It's very, very hard to do that in a tier 0 format, but I think I got it kind of close to figured out. It's not that much that you have to change from format to format. It's just slight cards here, slight cards there. What is the structure of what everybody else is playing? And then what can I do to overpower that? Pot of Extravagance is one of those cards. Additionally, being able to push through and overpower is Forbidden Droplet. Pot of Extravagance, sometimes they'll try to negate it, and you can chain Droplet if you have it in your hand, and that is just a power play that can beat pretty much any deck still, because you're going to blank the field, and then with cards like Void Imagination to follow that up, which is the most powerful fusion spell in the game, in my opinion, besides Super Poly, obviously. Void Imagination summons Tierra, which gets so many Infernoid names into the graveyard, which each of them you have to banish a certain amount. 3 from the biggest ones, in case you have never noticed that. 3 from the biggest ones, 2 from the middle tier ones, 1 from the smaller ones, by banishing the Infernoid names. So it's, again, you don't want to overdraw the names, but you got to have the names, and this is the way to send them. You don't want to draw them, you want to send them with this card. You want to search that card with Void Vanishment, which is a necessary card that you have to grab both the trap and the fusion spell that you just saw. But Void Vanishment is nutty because it also gets to be a spot removal in a way, and it helps you get the Tierra and the level lock off of your field, which is also very key as well, because you get to basically remove whatever you battle with that Infernoid monster in case there's just a monster that you're having trouble dealing with. This card will get rid of it. So this is also very, very key to have in your deck as well. And I feel like there's a lot more I could talk about, but they need to give us some kind of support for y'all to really understand where I'm coming from. Like, if they keep making Void cards, there are other Void trap cards and stuff like that. They're just so slow that they don't do enough. The Void expansion card would be an example. The Void trap card would be an example. They're just not quite good enough, but they're kind of cool. And I'm not playing set rotation anymore because there's no Mystic Mine, so I'm not playing the Void expansion card. Enemy controller, dumb. I'm playing it because I'm playing a card like Lair of Darkness, which allows me to tribute my opponent's monsters as mine. Enemy controller also lets you take control of your opponent's monsters. So when you activate Lair, it's an instant bait that they have to deal with. If it's a lot like Dimensional Fissure and a lot of cards like that. If you don't deal with this card, you lost, literally. And that's why this deck is so powerful going second still, because activate Lair, you got to start moving or you're going to lose. Because if it sticks, I'm going to activate enemy controller, and as cost, tribute a card like Baron, for example. If you're going against a tier board, tribute Baron, take Rukalos. Now you got a problem on your hands, and I haven't even started anything yet. Or whatever deck you're going against, whatever matchup it is, that's still a really powerful interaction. And enemy controller is such a powerful card because it allows some of the Infernoids to resolve in different places. Maybe you need to heavy storm the field and they chain Sullic, you know, or a chain like Imperm or Veiler or something to stop one of their effects, and then boom, you take them completely off the field. I wanted to mention Lilith because Lilith can be somewhere in your deck. I would recommend the side deck because you're playing to go second build. You don't want the trap cards like that, and you'd have to change the entire build to go first, and this deck isn't good enough to go first right now because the other decks are too powerful going second. But Lilith is really, really dumb because it allows you to grab stuff like Dimensional Barrier. If you were playing a hard go first build, it would be kind of cool. to play, but basically grabbing any normal trap cards and tributing your opponent's monster. This card had to be mentioned before we could move on. Lair of Darkness is extremely powerful and an underrated. Lair of Darkness field spell. The field spells that are old school like that are so underrated that people just forget about them. Terraforming, because I don't want to overdraw the Lair. I don't want to keep seeing Lair, but I still want to see a little bit. I do Mystic Mine in this deck because the monsters go on and off the field really, really quickly. But, you know, it is what it is. Mystic Mine is a corny card, so it is what it is. Harpy's Feather Duster. To wipe your opponent's back row. Yes, you can push through the back row anyway, but you know, if you want to just have something in the main for all the floodgate people out there, the Subterra players that you'll run into, etc., etc. 1-for-1 for the Decatron, that's every name in the deck. Reasoning to mill through your deck. Monster Gate to mill through your deck. And again, it's tributing, so you get to tribute your opponent's monster to do that. Again, that's why they got to deal with Lair, because you get to activate Monster Gate and tribute off the negation if they have any. And you get to wipe them out. So like they have to negate the Lair, and that's why this deck is still strong going second. This is one of the few decks that you can still play going second, and you can just adjust it slightly to whatever that you see within your meta. Void Feast, you got to play one. Somebody's gonna make you go first, or you're going to push through your opponent's board, not quite kill them, and you'll have that Void card to be able to search, and you can just make it where your opponent can't come back by searching the trap card if you already just pushed through the board with your normal cards that you've already went through, and then set up to block them from being able to come back into the game. So you have to play one of this card, and it's an extremely powerful card that basically says send one void spell or trap from your hand or face up to the field, to the graveyard, and then special summon up to 3 Infernoid monsters from your deck whose levels equal exactly 8. So just to show that off real quick, it's not a combo, I just wanted to show what that means. Like Decatron and Sajet and another Decatron would be an example. That's level 8, 6, 7, 8. Then you also have an additional, like if you drew this card, which is kind of bricky and you don't want to draw it like that, but say you drew it, then you could just summon these two because that's 7 and that's 1. And then if you just really got screwed over, you could do stuff like this with this and this because that's 8 again. And then last but not least, you got like a Tondale, which is 8 by itself, which that means you really bricked if you can only summon this, or it's just late in the game and you already have them in your graveyard. So there's always stuff to do, and there's always more plays to make. Getting in the extra deck as we round the deck profile out, Infernoid Tierra is a really powerful fusion monster that sends from the deck and the extra deck, send for 3 from the top, which is bad against tier. You got to be careful with that. But if you're not playing the Shizu build, which can play Dweller, then you got to be really careful with that, but you still got to do it because you got to send your Antithesis as well in sequence, which is very, very key to note, which is the second effect. These resolve in sequence. So being able to resolve the second effect and then send the extra deck monsters that you need, whether it be additional Infernoid names that count as Infernoid names that you get to banish, you sending Intis to pop, you have to fight through Dweller with that forbidden droplet. So sometimes this is the only time the Dweller will matter against you because Infernoids are inherent summons. But Intis can push through if you've stopped the Dweller and just wipe your opponent's board out where they won't be able to come back. Garura, have to mention Super Poly. I do want to play Mud Dragon. I'm playing it in the Ishizu build again, just because it's so easy to make 4s in that deck and make Minervas and stuff like that. And I'm playing 2 of that in this, but in this version I'm going for like wheels fast. So like I do want to play Super Poly. I have them on loan, I switch back and forth, and I'm finding space and I'm messing around with cards. This deck is still one of my favorite decks and I can still play it right now, so that's why I'm talking so much about that, because you have to kind of explain what in the world it is if you've never seen this deck. Gravity Controller to get yourself out of the level lock. When you summon the Infernoid Tierra, put in the extra monster zone, and then take yourself out of the level lock by making Gravity Controller. It doesn't have a level. Link Karibo, because if they stop Decatron, you just want to have some kind of defense. Lambda, I'm playing Gamma. So, you know, being able to deal with a card, which I am playing. I wanted to save this part for when I got to the Lambda. I'm maining these because I have to deal with Shifter, because I have to deal with Medura, because I have to deal with pushing my power spells through and them having negation, Gamma. It depends on what you expect. I always switch back and forth between these two. If you ever seen one of my profiles, until we get new support, like these are the most powerful ways to add additional cards to push through what your opponent does. Wish we had more power Infernoid cards that could do stuff, but these cards are really, really powerful as well generically. It just depends on what in the world everybody's playing. If you're playing against a whole lot of random stuff, Gamma crushes the rogue, but this crushes the meta. So like if you're playing against tier, this is going to destroy them. If you're playing against a variety of stuff, this is going to destroy them. If you expect shifter, this is going to save your ass, to be honest. So long story short, this is what you're kind of picking through right now. You can play other cards. Let me know in the comments if you have another idea. I'm always open to them. But Lambda, I'm not playing Gamma. I normally would play it right here. I'm playing Unicorn because I keep dealing with cards that can't be destroyed, and the Nunsu destroys. And like if I don't draw Dark Ruler, it's just a pain in the butt. So you got to have like some kind of removal, but I do want this to be Omega. I go back and forth between this being Mud Dragon, Omega, and Nightmare Unicorn. Rounding out the Link 2s before I get to that Nightmare Unicorn though is Hita. You play a deck full of fire monsters. So, you know, you take enemy controller, you have a level lock on the field maybe, then you just make Hita with one of your Infernoids. You have a fire monster. If you don't have Lair on the field, they're not dark yet. You can't play the Dark Charmer just because Lair turns everything dark, so you just make the Dark Charmer. That's also another slot where this Nightmare Unicorn could be. So you see how much variety I could have that quickly, and I'm playing Extravagance, so you know. Nightmare Phoenix is necessary in my opinion. If you don't banish it, then you're just going to want to fight through stuff and start popping spells and traps before you activate your fusion spells. You always got clear boards before you start activating stuff. Equimax is the OTK. If you've never seen it, I'll explain it at the end of the video. But basically, if it's pointing at an Infernoid, it's a whole lot of damage is going to be done. If it's pointing at multiples, it's game. It's OTK. Getting into the side is random, you know, evenly. I always pick very powerful generic cards, evenly twin. When you're dealing with, you beat the crap out of anything that's pretty much meta or that touches his extra deck in general. And Tier is the only one that has enough layers to like maybe stop you. But that's just because of the sheer power of these new decks and the power creep. But as far as the decks like Guru and all that type stuff, Eldritch and Striker and all that, you got to have stuff like this. And Flu as an additional card. Pankratops is a very powerful card. A lot of times I take out the reasoning. I just hate hitting this and Driver in the same deck. It gets bricky. So then I start messing around with stuff. If I'm playing against a deck, I want to start breaking boards. I am considering siding the Lava and the Alpha. But Pankratops still gets the job done, and you don't have to play. You can play Alpha instead if you just want to keep Reasoning in your deck and go right past it. You will get stopped on Reasoning, so it's like... But Pankratops is such a powerful card with 2600 attack that like I hate not playing the card. If I can play it in a deck, I will play it. Dimensional Barrier, very powerful card. Again, remember Lilith can grab that, which is really, really powerful. If you're playing a go first version, don't play it inside of this meta though. You'll lose, I promise. But Dimensional Barrier, if you were still considering it, if you're that hard-headed, yes, Dimensional Barrier would kind of beat Super Poly for a second. So you know, there's that, and it would have it would add additional trap targets in your deck for the Lilith if you want to try that version. Let me know in the comments if you want me to make the go first version. I can. Dark Ruler. Blank their field out and then hit them with a Nunsu, hit them with Pankratops, hit them with Fusion Spell, hit them with everything. And you got to have these. You don't need them that heavily. I also could play talents, but I don't like hitting the talent with the extravagant stuff. But if they like hard negate the activation of extravagance, then talents is live, and then talents is just like you either got to pick it all the way or you don't inside of this deck. And I want power cards with the extravagance to get to cards like this, so that's why I'm playing cards like that. The trap card that you saw in the main, as well as this card, can grab the barriers or this card, and they're going to tell you to go first. When you tell them to go first because you're playing a go second deck and you run them over, they're going to tell you to go first. Boom, you crack them with this. Like you counter them, they walk right back into this, and they're going to lose. Whether this resolves or the fusion spell that you saw earlier resolves, it is going to be devastating to them either way. these are very powerful cards still to this day, and power creep has not affected them because they're so powerful and were so overpowered back in the day that they're still powerful, and it's not going to change. Call by the Grave, for when they make you go first and they're playing a shifter deck, Call by the Grave the shifter. You're welcome. With that, guys, I wanted to explain at the very end of the video, because I said I would, the OTK with Equimax and pointing it at cards. Once you've pretty much dumped, let's say you've activated the Void Imagination and you just filled up your graveyard and you've just cleared the tier out of your extra zone, or you've activated the trap card to put a bunch of monsters on your field, and you want to get to this, you made Hita, you stole their card, you made Equimax, you put it on the field, you put a Tonedale on the field, you put another big monster on the field. It could be, I'll just grab one really quick. Let's make it a Nunsu. 2,000 plus 28 plus 3,000, that equals 5,000, that equals 78. Plus that makes it 98, and 98 attacking over something usually is game. If it is not, the OTK resolves where you get to activate to tribute a card on your side of the field to banish a card out of their graveyard. Tribute the Equimax. Now you can attack. Remember, this has the ability, if it's pointing at something, it can attack. You tribute this out. Now they can attack, and that'll clear them out, and that's like 13,000 damage. On an open field, that's 13,000. If they have one monster, that's 13,000. So that's very key to know. And with that, guys, that's why I play the Go Second version. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Always have to do these in-depth profiles this way, just in case you've never seen the deck. Appreciate you for tuning in. I'm out. Arrivederci. Ciao!